Hello, this is Sherry Beaver with South Carolina Department of Education, and we are here today to continue with our South Carolina Transcripts and Procedures webinar. We are now going to present to you part 2, and today we are going to start with Louise Amos. So Louise, take it away.
Okay. Our agenda for part 2, the PowerSchool section, we're going to go over some PS coding requirements for transcripts, talk about some best practices some districts have shared across the years, and how some things work really well and some things don't, so we just pick out the best ones and share them with you. We're also going to talk about the proper procedures for changing a grade level during the school year. And we're going to talk about early graduate transcripts and procedures, talk about the defining process and procedures for archiving transcripts, and then we're going to have Laura discuss ordering and verifying diploma orders for graduation. Most of us are very familiar with this particular heading on the transcript. We find often, however, that colleges call us and say that they're getting a transcript from a school, but it doesn't have final on the title, and their information from Commission on Higher Ed tells them they must not accept anything but the final transcript. So we wanted to emphasize that colleges, universities in South Carolina, other entities who are looking closely at transcripts for eligibility purposes for scholarships want to see the state of South Carolina standard high school transcript final in their title. They also want to make sure that every field is populated. You see graduation date, class of, diploma type. Those are key components of a transcript that colleges and universities are viewing. Hello. Okay. Just to speak to the two fields, graduation date versus class of, we have some folks out in PowerSchool world who get those confused, and we wanted to make sure that folks are understanding exactly where those two fields are and what we call them. If you look at the populate the graduation date field, the order is specified there. It's a picker, calendar picker that you can click on and pick the date on which the student is going to graduate. And if you look at the class of on your transcript, the field that you populate for that particular data value is on the scheduling setup page, and it's the year of graduation. In sharing best practices for reporting your data, some districts have procedures in place that list out for their schools exactly what fields need to be verified so the transcript accurately reports data for a student. We want to, for example, if you look at the core field versus the custom field, we're going to show in a few minutes a little chart that we put together, but just to ask you some questions that you might want to consider. At the beginning of the school year for the senior students, do you have a procedure in place where you verify that the graduation date is accurately set for all of those students in that class? Do you have students in your sophomore or your junior classes who are requesting to graduate early? And have you set their date, their graduation date? I know some of you wait until it's closer to time, but if you have a procedure in place where you must verify the dates by a particular during a particular time frame, then you know that you've got some kinds of checkpoints in place so that you don't miss the real information for these students when it's very important for them to have it ready for them to go. All right, I said we're going to share a chart with you. There are 8 very important transcript data elements that we find missing a lot. So we've presented a chart for you to look through and determine what fields those are. You can have this on your wall if you want to put it on your wall. But these data elements are the ones that you want to pay close attention to ensure that the transcript information is correct. When you look at graduation date, we've talked about that enough, but the display date, you find it on the SE student information page. You populate it, the internal field, if you want to do a query and look, pull those dates and look at them or verify them or compare them from one student to another. You can use the internal field name grad date. The other 4, class rank, date calculated, official signature, principal. We put principal here. We know that you can substitute the signature of a superintendent if the principal's not available for some reason. I know one year we had a principal pass away the week of graduation and they had to scurry and put the principal signature on those transcripts. Those things happen. The 2 dates, date calculated and date that goes along with the principal's date, come from the system date, and the field is letter.date. So those are some particular ideas that we want to make sure you are very comfortable with, that you understand that we're not trying to tell you everything you need to know, but trying to pick out those things that we get a lot of questions on at the end of the school year or during the summer. Or you wouldn't believe how many students 20 years from now will come back and ask you for a transcript to verify a South Carolina diploma. These things happen, and we've got to have procedures in place so that we can provide appropriate information. Okay, looking through this set of bullets, you see that we're talking about the transcript object report. It was developed in the Office of Research and Data Analysis many years ago. The last version of the templates that went out for schools and districts to customize for their use were sent out in 1819. We do have some changes that need to be made, but we're going to make sure that we have everything up to snuff before we provide a new template for anyone. So don't even look for one for this year. We want to make sure that you do understand the difference between the work in progress and the final transcript. Whoops, I'm doing it again. I moved my little roller on my mouse and my screen changes. I don't mean to do that. I apologize. All right. The district level PowerSchool administrator is the person who's responsible for importing those templates into the PowerSchool and to update them for you. And then at each school, you have your transcript template that you can use for final or work in progress. The South Carolina Commission on Higher Education had worked through with the South Carolina Department of Education to come up with those templates that have the required information for state scholarships to be students to be eligible for state scholarships. We've already noted that the principal's signature or the superintendent's signature must be on the transcript. And for this year only, we have a special note. We've emphasized it in part 1. But you must have a date calculated, and it must be on the transcripts on or before June 30th during the 2021 school year. Normally, and it will go back to that normal June 15th is your deadline for having that date on your transcript. So you can calculate the information on your transcript, but the date calculated must be on or before June 15th or June 30th as this year. There are requirements that students, that colleges and universities look for when students' transcripts arrive at their door. It must be an official transcript. They have to have one from the school. They can't, of course, accept one from a student. It must be the final transcript. I don't need to emphasize that. I can't emphasize that enough because we've seen it happen too many times that colleges don't get the right transcript. The graduation date is the last date of the school term in which the student completes coursework. The GPA and class rank cannot include grades earned after the last official senior class graduation date. The last date of this calendar year is that's a deadline for these students. They cannot have grades put on their transcripts after that date. When the students have to complete requirements for graduation during the summer, they're considered a summer graduate. They're no longer a part of their class of the spring graduates. The uniform grading policy, we have to live by that across the state. All of our schools are required to follow the different components of the uniform grading policy. It's a regulation. And we place this slide in there just to remind folks that there is a different grade scale beginning with the 2016-17 school year. We're using the 10-point scale. I think most student records are only have that right now. There are a few exceptions, but when you're verifying data, make sure that the grade scales are correct. Okay. Let's just get this slide. I did. Okay. We put another a slide here as a reference for you, noting that there were some letter grades that need to be observed. The WF, the FA at 50, the P has no value, but when a student passes a course for certain reasons, and the uniform grading policy specifies all of the reasons behind using a P, NP, WF, WA, WP, those are generally for transfer students or students moving out of a course. Audit, there's no value whatsoever, but you must indicate when a student does audit a course, and there are particular documents that must be in place for a student to be able to audit a course. And of course, NP is not passing. Again, just a reminder, the 10-point scale is very important to follow beginning in 2016-17. Now, courses carrying high school units of credit. You notice I did not say Carnegie units. I think we're moving away from that term. We're calling them high school units of credit. The uniform grading scale and the system for calculating GPAs and class rank will apply to all courses carrying high school units of credit. And these include those units that students at middle or junior high school levels earn. All courses that are going to be counted need to have the HS code, because that indicates it's a high school code, and you filter on that particular credit type. Regulation 43-232.I.B. Important to note, I'm giving you a second to read that. Oops. To further clarify, courses taken by students attending middle and junior level schools, the course database at the middle school must have the active high school courses listed with appropriate codes, HS, subjects, grade level meaning CP or IB or honors. Note that PE and health courses are not to be offered for high school credit in grades 6 through 8. When you convert grades on transcripts, you must follow the specific information for using the appropriate letter grades. This set of bullets takes us through bringing in out-of-state or non-public school accredited schools. The regulation specifies letter grades with no numerical averages for courses completed during the school years 2015-16 and prior. You have to use the appropriate numbers for calculating, and letters. For an A, 96 is your numerical percent that you're going to use. For an F, you've got to use 61 during 2015-16 years, but you must use 50 as the failing grade for calculation purposes. If the transcript indicates the student has, what in the world is going on here? I'm sorry, y'all. If the transcript indicates the student has earned a passing grade in any course in which he or she had a numerical average lower than 60, the grade is recorded as a passing, or P. And if the transcript indicates the student has earned a failing grade in any course in which he or she had a numerical average of 60 or above, the grade will be recorded as an NP. So noting those pieces of information on grade conversions, Sherry has a lot more information that she has provided for you, but in PowerSchool, you must know how to input the appropriate letter grade and percent score for the different courses, and how you convert the grades from incoming transcripts. You have all kinds of international transcripts to consider. When PowerSchool in South Carolina training courses were offered earlier during the year, we presented this conversion chart for non-percentage grades to kind of give a quick reference that you could maybe even print and put on your wall. But we had a few glitches in that first chart. We had an oversight on the WF and FA percent that you needed to include in the historical grade record for a course. And one of you called it to our attention and told us, oh, you've got a 0 there. The UGP says you've got to have a 50. So we took this chart off and said, okay, we'll fix it. And I think we sent it out twice. And we had some other glitches. So this updated, if you notice in the upper right-hand corner, updated 10/21/2020. We have updated the chart. We have it totally correct at this point, and we would really appreciate your taking this particular version of the chart and sharing it with anybody in your schools that may need the chart for use and for reference. The other change that we had to make was underneath the P grade, passing grade, graduation calculation, we had exclude. No, if a child passes, that grade is included in the calculation. And we also had to make sure that for WF and FA, that those grades are included in the calculation. Unfortunately for students, but it's a fact of life in grading world. When a student retakes a course, there's specific updates that must be made in PowerSchool. The uniform grading policy spells out that all courses retaken in middle or high school will show on the transcript, and that's a little different from previous years. It's been in place now for a while, so everyone should know this information. But we had a recent question from a school administrator where a student earned a grade of D in Algebra 1. He took geometry in grade 10 and began taking Algebra 2 in grade 11. Then, about a month or two into the course of Algebra 2, he said, I want to go back and retake Algebra 1 so I can bump my grade up. Would the student be allowed to do this? Well, let's look at the bullets. Only one course attempt and the highest grade earned for the course is calculated in GPA. A student who retakes the high school credit course from middle school must complete it before the beginning of the second year of high school or before the next sequential course. Now that's for the middle school who took an honors course during 6th, 7th, or 8th grade. Now, student in grades 9 through 12 must retake a course by the end of the next school year or before the next sequential course. He's already taken geometry and started Algebra 2. No, of course he can't. Those are some questions we get, and many of you experienced counselors, many of them experienced counselors know these answers. But as a PowerSchool coordinator, you may have to go and ask for further information on these situations. For all grade levels, all courses will remain on the transcript. However, only the highest grade will be used when figuring the student's GPA. You must look at those radio buttons that exclude or include for GPA, for honor roll, for each of the individual courses that a student retakes. Those are important pieces of information for PowerSchool people entering data to know. So in order to make it a little more simple for looking at the marks on that grade history page or historical grades page, you look at old course and new course, and we've broken down the differences. When a student retakes a course, we call it, the new course is the one he retook. The old course, we have to go in and look at earned credit hours. He's not going to get credit for taking a course twice. He will not earn one for the old and one for the new. So you actually have to go in and manually update the 0 for earned credit hours on the old course. Potential credit hours remains as originally stored. In other words, if the course had 1 credit or 2 credits, those would remain as original. You exclude the course from GPA calculation, class rank calculation, honor roll, graduation calculation, but you must mark yes on display on transcript. Now, what about that new course? When the student retakes a course, then you must look very carefully and apply the, it has to have the same activity code. You have to apply the same information, potential credit. The credit hours are based on the code for the student, for the course. You would include GPA calculation, class rank calculation, include honor roll, include graduation calculation, and yes, you must display it on the transcript. All right, what is the difference in retaking a course and course recovery? UGP spells it out again. We've taken these bullets directly from the Uniform Grading Policy. The original failing grade will remain on the transcript as is. If a student passes the credit recovery course with a 60 or higher, the passing grade will be a P. The numerical value. If a student fails the credit recovery course with a grade below a 60, the score is going to be NP, not pass, and transcribed to the numerical grade value of 0. This code must include CR in the 5th and 6th characters. And in the uniform grading policy, it also states the credit recovery course must have a CR in the course title. Now, generally what happens when a student, wants to have credit recovery, the person who is handling these courses will have to enter that course in the database as a credit recovery course, and it is different from the regular course. You indicate the differences with the CR in the course title, so it's easy to filter on, but CR in the 5th and 6th characters as well. And that 4th bullet gives an example of how the title may look for an English 1 course. The code 3024CR, and if it's college prep, C with a whole credit, W. The title, English 1 CR. Now, difference in credit and content recovery. One other fact I wanted to state about the credit recovery, NCAA folks will not accept a credit recovery credit, or they don't like for their athletes to take credit recovery. They'd rather see them retake the course. There's more information you can get from those offices who deal directly with that situation. All right, for content recovery, this is the old-fashioned way of getting extra help during the time frame the student's taking a course. So there's a time frame that the child must complete all work, and there's a deadline by which the grade has to be stored in PowerSchool. But districts set the policy for those time frames with their students. All right, you all know what historical grades are. You know what the historical grade page is. You're the PowerSchool administrators. But we like to define this because we may have other folks in the audience that are new to this, and they're learning for the first time a lot of information about grading. Historical grades are final grades that are permanently stored in the student's record. At the end of each grading term, the PS administrator stores those grades, and they're taken directly from a teacher's grade book. These are the grades that appear on report cards and transcripts. And if a child transfers out of your school, those are the grades that you want to pass along to the receiving school. Excuse me. One thing I'd like to mention, teacher grade book grades and PowerSchool grades should match at all times when you have a final transcript printed. Sometimes we've learned the hard way that a student comes to a teacher and says, "You calculated my grade wrong. I should have had an A and I got a C." The teacher goes back in, looks at the assignments and the averaging and says, "Well, you missed this, this, and this." And the student pulls the paperwork out and says, "No, you missed putting the grades in the grade book." The teacher has to recalculate the grades in the grade book. Now, at that point, the teacher must confer with the PowerSchool administrator, and the PowerSchool administrator can update those grades after they're averaged and restore in the historical grade page the information that needs updating. But those two grades must be in sync for accuracy. Can't talk this morning. Looking at the historical grades page, you know that this is the normal view that you get when you go straight to that page. The columns at the top of each of those excuse me, the column headings at the top of each of those columns indicate information for those students. It's very important. If you look over in the F1 column, F1 represents the final grade for the course that went at the end of the term for the student. E1 represents an exam score, E2 and E3, and the other M1, M2 could represent a different grading scale or time frame. For example, there are some schools that use 3 terms instead of 4, but those who use quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4, all of those scores are identified. If you have empty cells in any of those, I would certainly go find out why. And then semester 1 and semester 2 averages. Gives a lot of information for you to view for an individual student. Now you can transfer a lot of this or export a lot of these data and compare records between and among schools or students in a classroom. All right, store terms. We're talking about bins or column names seen that we just looked at. We included this slide to make sure you all folks know final stored grade, F1, and then the other common terms. The parts of the historical grade page, very important for someone who is looking at grading data for students. Note, some cases from year to year, a school name may change. If the PowerSchool administrator or someone forgets to go into the district level and look at school names and information and forgets to change the school name, the old school name is going to print on a transcript. So if you ever look at a report, make sure that you look at the school and district information. The year of the course, student grade level, course information, course grade, GPA points, all of these are cells that must have accurate data in order for the report to be accurate. Continuing, absences, Carnegie units. Now we put Carnegie on this page to just remind us that that's the old-fashioned term, but they're high school credits. Each course has its own credit. Sometimes you see 0.5, sometimes you see 2. Normal is 1. Credit type is going to represent the subject area, and we have a table or a chart that indicates which credit type for which course. Again, HS is very important for high school. Those radio buttons, GPA calculation, class rank, if you don't have the appropriate radio button checked, include or exclude, it will definitely impact the calculation for GPA, class rank, or honor roll, or graduation. And then in teacher comments, you can always put a comment to clarify a situation for any student's course information. Did want to mention change history at the bottom. If anyone goes into PowerSchool in the historical grade page and makes a change and submits the change, you're going to see a note in change history. It gives us the information about who made that change, on what date it was made, specifically what was made. So don't think that someone can go into historical grade page and just update information randomly without detailed notes on changes that have been made. When you need to go in and create a new historical grade in on that page for a transfer student, you would go in and populate the school name, the school from which the child transferred, and the school year. The store code, again, is going to be F1 in the historical grade information. One thing we want to point out, and there was a whole session on PowerSchool for PowerSchool administrators on entering historical grades from another school. The section number should be blank, and the teacher name will more than likely be blank. If you read that paragraph when you go into PowerSchool, it tells you either provide the course and section number or the course name if this is historical data. If the course is not in your database, you would not put in the course number and section number. Just put the course name on the transcript from which the school transferred. Grade specifics. The uniform grading policy is our resource that we must use constantly, and the activity coding manual changes each year, but there are credit type information. The chart is in the activity coding manual. Those fields are very important to a child, and if it were your transcript, it would be very important for you to have the grade and the percent correct, the grade level, the GPA points. I always tell, I've said in other trainings that I always think about, how does this impact my child if this were my child's grade set? And I want to make sure that it's as accurate as possible, and I know you would too. Okay, here's our little cheat sheet on credit types. ES, MS, of course, elementary and middle schools, but HS is the important one for those credited courses. And the subject areas. Notice that other social studies has an L. And I think the rest of those, for the most part, have been the same over the years. Grade calculations and transcript options. I've already mentioned that we want to make sure that include and exclude are very accurately checked off for the particular course that you're looking at. And display on transcript must be yes, even for audited courses. The detailed view of the historical grades page gives you a lot more information that you can check for a student. If you don't, for example, over here on the right-hand side, I see something that I think is going to cause a problem in this screenshot. When I look at credit type and I see C, X, HS, and an M26, I have no clue what an M26 is. It's not a part of our subject codes. So that may be a red flag that there's something wrong and the transcript may not print properly. Early on, when we put PowerSchool out across all schools, we had to come back and add the HS to our credit types, because without the filter there, we were getting all courses that a child took in elementary through high school showing on a transcript. Be very careful when you look at some of these things. GPA, yes, those things are important to know about a particular record for a student. Now, this is a screen I would like for you all to please look at carefully. In the early graduate guide, it put in information from another source, from PowerSchool, and we've since learned that when you're in the middle of the school year and you have a child in the 11th grade who comes to your counselor's office and says, I want to graduate in January because I will have all my requirements completed. Well, he's an 11th grade student, but he's going to graduate in January. He needs to be transferred to the 12th grade. In order to change that grade level in PowerSchool, you need to transfer the student out with an exit code of GC, which means grade change, at the end of the term. Now, what term depends on how your terms are set up in PowerSchool. But if you generally procedures for high school students, I'm seeing more and more that administration are requiring the administrative staff is requiring that a student let them know at the beginning of the school year that they are going to graduate, they can graduate and want to complete in January. You can change their grade level at the beginning of the school year if that's the case. If a student comes in the middle of that term, you may have to go in and change the grade at the end of that first term and then work with the data that way. But then you re-enroll the student on the next day with a corrected grade level, and then you verify the EFA coding just in case there's a change necessary for that field. The Early Graduate Guide is, for the most part, currently the one source that we can look at for information about working with these children. You do store all student grades for the school, for the student. Ensure that the exclude from class ranking checkbox on the other information page is selected, because any child that graduates early for scholarship eligibility purposes cannot have a class rank on the transcript. Believe it or not, we've had colleges and universities send a transcript back to a school saying, this child graduated in January and he has a class rank. That's impossible. He can't have a class rank as a one student out of the entire class. So make sure that you do look carefully and make these changes before you print a transcript for an early graduate. When you do make a change in any student's record, you must go to the grading page at the district level and select the manually recalculation frequency and recalculate now for that class ranking procedure so that the class ranks will accurately be represented on a transcript. And then you print the transcripts. Now what does print mean? Well, you can print or you can print to paper, either way. Archive those transcripts, that means store them. Just like you store the end of the spring term transcripts for that class, you've got to print the transcript for the students who graduate early, archive their transcripts, because after they graduate and they come back in February after they finished everything in January and say to you, I never got a transcript. You can't go in and print a transcript in February for a child who finished in January, because you're not going to get the information properly coded on a transcript. And then transfer the student out of the current school and move him to graduated school, following the procedures in that early graduate guide. Just to emphasize a couple of fields, or a few fields that we are discovering that are not correct when DOTS data arrive at Laura's door. Look very carefully at the school name, the principal name, the email address for staff who work with the DOTS system, school phone numbers, and school physical address. You'd be surprised how often these school names change, principals change, and all of the information changes, but it's not updated in PowerSchool. There's a place to do that in the district schools information page. PowerSchool coding requirements. In order for the DOTS system to provide the appropriate information, the student first, middle, last names, and generation that show up on a legal document, such as a birth certificate or other legal document, you've got to have in PowerSchool the appropriate information, correctly spelled everything, even generation, to have a correct diploma print. The diploma type must be F. A student only gets a South Carolina high school diploma if his code is F. A diploma ordered must be F. Again, student information page is where you input that data. The enrollment status for an active student, 0. For a graduated student, In the graduated school, it's a 3. The early late orders are for winter, summer, or transfer students. And the special exit dates for summer, fall, and winter depend on the exit dates for based on district policy. I've already stated this, but you cannot have a child's name misspelled on his diploma. He's going to come and just rant and rave. So always double check, be very careful that apostrophes, upper lowercase letters, all of those things have to be accurate. You must make an edit in PowerSchool so that future data are correct in PowerSchool and match what's in the DOT system or the DOT system. All right, we're going to move on and talk a little more about storing the information for transcripts. You must process the final transcripts after all the students' grades are stored at the end of each school year. That's your spring. You must also process final transcripts for any student who leaves as an early graduate. You must run transcript and class ranking reports for all students by grade level, 9, 10, 11, and 12. There have been cases where districts have contacted me at the department and said, we don't have our 9th and 10th and 11th grade transcripts stored anywhere. We just didn't store those. Really? All right, Palmetto Fellow Scholarship determination can be based on a child's 10th grade transcript. You want to make sure that final transcripts at the end of each of these years and 8th grade, 7th grade, if they take credit courses. And again, we wanted another bullet to emphasize that June 15th is the date calculated deadline date on a transcript. For this particular year, it's going to be June 30th, but normal, it's going to stay at June 15th for the future, unless you know what happens. After final transcripts are processed, they must be archived for later retrieval. And we're suggesting that you print and save paper copies in student folders for reference. Make sure that you have folders by class, by year, for easier access when you print electronic version, the PDF. Store them in multiple places, but make sure that every one of the files that are stored are identical. Don't make a run and save it, and then someone else make a run and save it, because they're going to be different. All of the archive transcript must be printed at the same time, and you can do it by class on different days, but the transcripts by class must be printed or submitted at the same time and stored properly. And then your procedures for school and district levels will tell you where to put them, whether it's on a registrar's computer or on a server, a special saving, archiving server. Those are important pieces of information that some schools in the past have missed. And it's scurry trying to get a transcript for a student 20 years from now, 5 years from now, when you don't have the appropriate archive procedures in place. Never run a new transcript using PowerSchool after you have archived transcripts. You will not get the same information 9 times out of 10. Grade changes can present GPA and class rank errors. And those grade changes are scores on end of course, on the final grades in the teacher grade book. If there's a change, it has a domino effect on other students in that same class. And believe it or not, we have gotten letters from colleges saying that this student's disqualified because a transcript was printed after and it doesn't have the same information. It has something like graduated students on the school. UPS people know what I'm talking about. Right, on our webpage, we have a transcript template information in the South Carolina Standard Transcript Templates for PowerSchool version 2.1. The link is here. We only provide transcript templates for PowerSchool to administrators who work directly with PowerSchool. There's a lot of information on those object reports that must be updated for individual schools to be able to print an accurate transcript. And the PowerSchool administrators are responsible for that updating process for each of their transcripts for schools to use. If you need one, send a note to powerschool@ed.sc.gov, and we'll be very happy to validate that you could get one and send it to you. Okay. I'm going to stop control and give it to Jason. Okay, there you are.
Louise, this is Sherry.
Mm-hmm.
Can you clarify that a student that graduates a year early, like a junior that graduates a full year early and they graduate in the spring, they do get a class rank?
Yes.
That's correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Early graduates and students graduating early are two different sets of students to look at. If a junior graduates in the spring, he is considered a senior in the spring at that point. And he is included in the class rank. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next portion of the. Okay. My name is Jason Roop. I work with Louise in the Office of Research and Data Analysis, and I just wanted to take a few moments to talk about Parchment. Parchment is a national company. It's a credential management system. They work with colleges and universities and other entities as a records exchange company. Now, we have partnered with them to handle transcripts. The partnership began in 2008. It was expanded in 2015 to focus on electronic transcripts. And then we further expanded the partnership in 2018 as a means to transmit transcripts directly between South Carolina high schools. One of the main things about Parchment is that the application and the service is provided to districts at no charge by SCDE. We also provide training and support for both implementation and then throughout the life cycle of the application itself. As I mentioned, Parchment is a national company, so their network extends across the country, even outside the country for institutions of higher education, but it also includes other entities outside of colleges and universities, such as accreditation groups. There are employers and other government agencies that can use Parchment if they have it installed and configured. And then critically, in South Carolina, the Commission of Higher Education uses Parchment, so schools and districts can send transcripts electronically to CHE to fulfill scholarship requirements. Now, there are numerous benefits to Parchment. I just kind of wanted to highlight a few of those in time saved, ease of use, and cost savings. I hear from a lot of districts and school staff that one of the great things about the application itself is the freedom and the flexibility it provides for the student request. So, for example, a student can log into Parchment, request that a transcript be submitted to either one college or university or to multiple ones, and then they can follow the progress of the request from the time that it was submitted, processed, and then received at a college or a university. So that saves a lot of time in terms of handling the process itself. It also can reduce the burden for the school personnel who are handling these requests. They can be sent individually or they can be sent in batch. So it has all the benefits of this type of application and processing. So you kind of reduce the more labor and time intensive elements of transcript processing paperwork. I was surprised at the number of schools that still do the paperwork. So we're trying to provide this as a service to kind of eliminate some of those burdens. And as I mentioned, it's provided at no cost, includes training and support. And the application itself is very user friendly and easy to use. So what we tried to do in 2018 is take these benefits and expand them through SHARE, which stands for the State High School Application for Records Exchange. Essentially, SHARE is a plugin. It integrates Parchment with PowerSchool. And the great benefit about SHARE is it allows the transmission of the transcripts from high school to high school. So this is particularly beneficial for highly transient populations that transfer a lot, but for any type of student transcripts that need to be submitted, especially if you're dealing with time-sensitive issues such as course enrollment. So right now we only have where transcripts can be submitted, but as you can see from the history, we've continually expanded the service. The next step is to make this more of a complete records exchange where it's not just the transcript, but all documents required for a student transferring. That is definitely something planned in the future. But as of right now, we do offer Parchment and SHARE. And if you're interested to learn more, or if you would like a demo, my name is Jason Roop. My contact information is at the end of the presentation. And I'm happy to answer any questions about that or schedule some workshops so that we can go over that. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Laura McNair.
Laura, I'm having some audio difficulties.
Well, that's because
Yeah.
I was on mute.
Okay, take it away, Laura. You got it now. Thank you.
Okay, I'm Laura McNair. I work in the Office of Federal and State Accountability, and I'm in charge of the deployment order tracking system. Because winter and summer deployment season is here, we're going to go through the early late feature in DOT. Many districts, they are having graduation for winter a little bit later this year. So I am ending the ordering period on February 8th, 2021. Jostens needs about 4 to 6 weeks in order to print and ship diplomas. So when you do order, please make sure you allow for that much time. And it is early December, so if you order now, you should be just fine. Spring diplomas use the Enrich, but however, late diplomas flow through PowerSchool. So you must make sure that PowerSchool is coded correctly. And Luis was kind enough to mention every field that needs to be coded in PowerSchool before you can order them. So once again, the South Carolina deployment order needs to be set to F, and deployment type should be set to F. The exit date is set to a valid date within the ordering period. So it must be on or before February 8th. And the exit date is not necessarily the graduation date. You may have students who graduate later than February or maybe early March. but they're still not part of the spring cohort. But you must order the diploma on or before February 8th. And Louise said that the enrollment status must be 0 for active students and 3 for graduated students. If the student's name will not show up in DOTS, please email me and I will see if IT can figure out why. More often than not, the South Carolina diploma order field was not set to F, and the exit gate was not within the ordering period. And we've had a few instances where the student has already been verified last spring, and of course, the student's not going to show up in DOTS if that student was already verified. Now, I know there is room for human error. We all make mistakes, but please make sure that you go through the verification list and remove any students who did not meet the graduation requirements of Regulation 43-234. Okay, to order diplomas, you're going to choose a web browser, and I am using Google Chrome now instead of Internet Explorer. You're going to enter ed.sc.gov in the URL bar, and then on the right-hand side, you see that big blue arrow, you're going to click Login. Once you click Login, you're going to get to the Member Center Important Information page. This year, IT made a new application web portal. So you're going to, of course, be on the left-hand side where Application Web Portal is. And then you're going to scroll all the way down to the bottom where you see Proceed to Application Web Portal Login. On this page, you're going to enter your username and password. If you don't remember your password, you can click on Reset Password and you should receive one in an email. Now, it's important that you do not copy and paste the password into that space, but you write it down on a sheet of paper and type it in because for some reason it's very sensitive. Your username should be your district assigned email. On the next page, you're going under Applications to Diploma Order Tracking System, or DOTS. The first page that you will see is an announcement page. It will have the winter ordering dates. You see winter 2021, September 1st, 2020 through February 8th, 2021. You will also see, if you click on PowerSchool requirements, everything that Luis and I talked about is right there in front of you. The spring batch diploma orders and the early late diploma orders. On the right-hand side, you're going to click on early late diploma orders to start the winter ordering process. When you get to this page on the left-hand side, you see diploma orders. You're going to click on that, and then you will go down to early late diplomas. I'm sorry, you're going to go to verify school information first. So here you're going to verify your district, your school, and make sure that when you get to period, you click on winter. Sometimes, you click on spring, it's not going to work. Make sure your physical address is correct, your administration, principal, superintendent, and then your contact information. If you are new to the position, then make sure you update that information. And of course, principals and superintendents change. And if it has changed, please make sure you email me for a Justin's signature form. And I did already send those out to all of my contacts, which include principals, some of the data clerks, registrars, school counselors, whoever's in charge of ordering diplomas received a signature sheet. Once the signature sheet is filled out, you can email it directly to Jostens, or you can email it to me and I will forward it. Another thing, we have a new district and entity information management system called DIMS, and that is available to your district, and there is a point of contact in your district office and maybe even in your school. You can find out who that person is, and you can send all the information that needs to be corrected to that particular person and have them updated. You can also send it to Karen Byram. Her name is right there. Her email address is right there, and she can change it as well. So once you do that, your information is verified. You get a success. You click on OK. Then it will take you back to this page, and then you will go to order early late diplomas. Once on this page, you are going to click on that white box with Add Students. Then you're going to type a portion of the student's name into the search box and click Search. So the name that we chose to put in there was Anakin Skywalker, and you will see his student ID number. You can type in as many students in that search box as you want to, and they will all populate there. Once all the students are there, you're going to click on their names and they will turn green. Then down at the bottom where the blue arrow is, you're going to click on it and it will move all of their names to the right-hand side of the page. So now Anakin Skywalker is on the right-hand side of the page. If you discover an error, highlight the student and click the left pointing arrow at the bottom of the right-hand column. You will see the big blue arrow. When the list is correct, click the Save button. So the little blue arrow to the left is where you click if you need to edit, and the big blue arrow to the right is when you have all of the names correct, and then you press Save. So in order to edit a student's name, a graduation date, a graduation period, or honors indicator, you can select the Edit icon. And that is to the right. You have graduation date, you have honors, you have edit, remove, and info. Now, if you need to correct the graduation date on multiple students, you can also do that as well. On this screen, you can edit an individual student information, and then you will select a ordering period, the graduation date, and then you will press Save. Here, if the order is correct, you can click Place Order. If it's not correct, you can click Cancel, and you can go back and make some other edits. So here, you know that your order is successful. However, if you have problems with ordering, a student may not show up in DOTS after all the PowerSchool fields are correctly coded. Just email or fax me the student's full name and graduation date, and I will email Jostens and order the diploma for you. Now, if I order the diploma for you, most likely that student is not going to show up on the graduation verification list. So when it's time to verify the student, you need to email or fax me the student's final archive transcript in a short letter from the principal stating the student met all graduation requirements of Regulation 43-234, and I will verify the student in DOTS. It is absolutely imperative that every single student is verified. I get dozens of phone calls with issues that students are having now that they graduated 10 years ago, and now they need a copy of their diploma, and the replacement diploma office right next to us cannot fill their order because did not verify this student. Most often, it is because the student graduated either in the winter or the summer. Sometimes it's because he or she went through adult ed. There are multiple reasons why the student was not verified, but it is imperative that every single student is verified. I cannot stress that enough. And also, I want to state that it is a common misconception that the State Department houses transcripts, and we do not. Some schools have been told that they need to tell the former graduate that they need to call the State Department to get their transcript. We do not have them. So please, please, you need to check with your Power School administrator. You need to check with the student records at the district office. 75 years of records must be kept. So please do not tell a student that you do not have the archived records. Verifying graduates. This is a short and sweet little list that you can, like Louise said earlier, you can print out and you can stick on your wall. You will log into DOTS and you will open the graduation list tab and choose verify graduation list. Of course, verify that they all graduated. There is an option on that graduation list to edit or remove, and the counselor needs to ensure that they all earned a diploma. The counselor should do this before the principal does. Sometimes the principals rush to do it right after graduation, and sometimes principal misses a child or two. Not all the time, of course, but the counselor should make sure that all students have graduated. At the bottom right of the screen, you're going to click on Verify Graduates, and then the graduation list approval screen is displayed. So this is for the principal part. Once the counselor does his or her part, she or he will submit to administration, and the principal will receive an email when it's time to verify graduates on their part. So the principal is going to enter a PIN number. If a new PIN number is needed, there's an admin tab at the top, and they can create a new one. So the PIN number will be entered, and then the graduation list approval screen will appear. The district's name, school name, and principal's name should be right there. And then he or she can click approve, and DOTS will send a confirmation email. If a principal leaves at the end of the school year, before you leave, principals, if you're watching this, please make sure all of your graduates are verified before leaving, so the new principal does not have to go in there and figure it out. There have been lots of cases this past summer where new principals have had to figure out the whole process and go in there and verify graduates that they've never seen before. Okay. So if you have questions, here are the different people that you need to call. Of course, we have Louise Amos and Jason Root from the Office of Data Research Analysis. I'm from the Office of State Accountability, and Sherry is with Student Intervention Services. And I appreciate all of you listening to this recording. And if you have any questions, please get in touch with us. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and have a great day. Hope you enjoyed part 1 and part 2. We have 2 links that we'll be sending out for both recordings. Have a great rest of your week.